Larry, give us a sense. Why is it so difficult for us as a people to really follow the science, follow the facts? Because it seems like the more we see it, the less we pay attention.
I wish I knew, and I wish I fully understood. We're not getting presidential leadership that's emphasizing what the scientific community mostly believes. We all want to believe that problems aren't there and that we can go out with equanimity. So there's always a desire to grab onto good news, and we're not being given a solid plan beyond grabbing at flailing attempts that could possibly work. The reality is that viruses like this go into remission, just like cases of cancer do, but there's always a very great risk that they'll come back, and you have to manage that risk very aggressively if you want to succeed. And my great fear is that we're not managing that risk aggressively. We're letting everything back into the open before any of the criteria that experts have laid out have been fully met. And we may not pay for it, but I think the best guess has to be that whether it's soon in the next couple of months or whether it's deferred towards fall and winter, we will pay a price for that in more cases, more fear and apprehension, ultimately less economy, more job loss, more reductions in income. So I'm not very comfortable with the path that we're on, which seems to me to be translating hope into a strategy. I could conceivably turn out to be wrong, but it's not a prudent bet that we're making. It's not a prudent bet that so many people are not wearing masks. It's not a prudent bet that we're engaged in so little testing and so little contact tracing. It's not a prudent bet that we haven't made more substantial efforts to separate and target aging and vulnerable populations. Our strategy seems to be we're just tired of this and we're going to let it all go. And it might work, but it's not something I think we can count on.
Well, Larry, as you say, you may be wrong, and we hope you're wrong, but thus far you've been pretty close to right in all of your caution. Look out now over the next month or 2 months. What might be maybe on the radar screen, but not in the center of it, that you think may well end up in the center of it?
I think there's a risk that there are going to be big increases in the number of cases in at least some of the places that have opened up, and that we're going to have more hotspots that may not be as bad as New York, but are going to be in the direction of what happened in New York, and that's going to freak people out. I think there's a risk that the law is going to let up, but people are going to realize that they're actually pretty scared to go to stores, and they're pretty scared to sit in restaurants, and people are going to realize that life's going to be more or less like this until we have a vaccine, and that's going to be a while, and that's going to lead to some reassessment that there's more uncertainty and lower incomes ahead, and that's hardly going to be a positive factor for markets. I think there's a risk that we're going to understand that there's much more financial strain ahead as people can start running out of the short cash reserves they had and not paying rent, not making mortgage payments, not making credit card payments. And I think there's an associated risk that lending is going to decline, and that's going to create something of an adverse financial spiral. I think there's a risk that
And Larry, if I could just interrupt on that point specifically, we heard from Fed Chair Jay Powell this week saying if this goes on very long, it's going to be trouble. And then at the very end of the week, the Fed itself came out and warned about potentially significant asset price declines if, in fact, this pandemic lasts too much longer, if this crisis lasts too much longer. At the same time, we have a debate between the Democrats and the Republicans, by and large, in Congress about how fast we need to have the next relief package. How much time do we have?
Every week, we delay committing to supporting the incomes of unemployed Americans, supporting new investments in testing, in contact tracing, in addressing this virus. Every week we delay supporting state and local governments is a week that we are weakening the foundation of the economy, prolonging the downturn, reducing the speed of the upturn. We should be making the necessary commitment to keep supporting the economy within the next 2 weeks, and it looks less likely now that we're going to do it. Does Nancy Pelosi have exactly the right formula? I think she's got many of the right elements, health investments, state and local government, unemployment insurance in particular, but we need to be getting somewhere, and I hope that we can find, in the face of this most extraordinary of emergencies, some capacity for bipartisan cooperation.
Is the best way to help the workers directly to the workers, or does it go through the states, through block grants, or to the companies?
I think we need to have generous unemployment insurance, and it needs to be there for gig workers. It needs to be there whether your job ends. It needs to be there whether you're on temporary layoff, whatever exactly the circumstances. If people have lost their ability to work, we need to be supporting their incomes and those of their families. We've got municipalities who do vital work. They fight the fires. They keep the streets safe. They will have to educate the children, perhaps in new ways, given this challenge. This is no time for them to be cutting their budgets because of balanced budget amendments and reduced tax collections. This is no time for hospitals to be closing. This is no time for doctors and nurses to be furloughed. And if we're going to avoid that, we need to be supporting state and local governments. And we need to get off of defense. We need to start playing offense and start using a moment when commodities are cheap, when there's all kinds of unemployed people, to do the work, whether it's renewing the country's infrastructure, whether it's building a caring economy, to do the work that's always been essential for us as a country.
Yep. Yeah, it's fascinating. There's a lot of work to be done, not to speak of infrastructure, which is something you've talked about on more than one occasion, Larry.
Renew the infrastructure, and that's what we need to be moving forward with, not debating about having a state bankruptcy code, which is the proposal that Senator McConnell put forth some time ago.